People always ask how we've built so many connections with top European clubs so fast. In the last 12 months alone, we've signed exclusive deals with 7 professional clubs. And in this video, I'm going to talk about what makes this possible. So for credibility's sake, the 7 professional Spanish clubs that we have signed in the last 12 months are as follows: Real Sociedad, Atlético de Madrid, CD Leganés, UD Levante, CFF Madrid, AD Torrejón, and UD Sanse. Now, while these deals started over the phone and through emails, etc., they've all been solidified by me in person directly with those clubs. As the company grows and as we move into new transitions every year, basically things do move quicker. And I do get parents, players, even some the agents always ask me how it is that we are able to sign or make new connections so much faster than so many people, right? And it's a little bit hard for me to answer this question because I think there's just a lot more that goes into it than you would think. But my biggest point would be the foundation that we've built over the last 8 years. It's not like elite football just popped out of nowhere and in its first year getting 7 professional clubs signed, right? But I think an even more important note to mention here that I think may impress people a little bit more, that is that we actually could have signed more. We could have been working with 17 clubs this year, new clubs to add to the roster, right? But I'm only talking about 7. Now, 7 is still an impressive number to make those connections in a year, but we actually do turn down a lot of clubs, right? The great thing about what we've built with elite football is that we now hold leverage, our own brand, our own set of values as well to approach clubs with. And when clubs are approaching us to work with us, just like a player would need to go through a checklist to work with us, so do 2 clubs, right? So we make clubs go through sort of a checklist. And a lot of the times, you know, when I do my sort of 2 or 3 times yearly trips where I go to Europe and I'm visiting clubs overseas, there's clubs that we've been talking to and, you know, over the phone, on paper, they seem great. And we get to the facilities, we start talking the nitty-gritty stuff in person, and there's red flags and there's things that, you know, they say, or maybe I trick them into saying, you know, feeling comfortable into saying something that they probably shouldn't be saying, and I sort of pull the plug on it because I know that it's not going to be a place for my players to be able to flourish, right? And so while we've done a lot of partnerships this year, there's also a lot more that we didn't do because not every club is going to have the best interest in our players. And we personally don't believe in making a deal just to make the deal when we know nothing's going to come from it. So what is it that we look for in a club before sending players? I'm going to break it down into about 4 different parts. The first one is footballing pathway. Clubs that have a clear structure, a actual chance of progression, ones that we can fully understand their funnel, whether it's a big club and there's a lot of different steps for our players to sort of work up towards before getting into the positions where they may be offered a scholarship or a contract, or if it's a smaller club and it's a bit more direct, but basically they still need to have a chance to actually progress through, right? The way we look at things like that, when I'm there, is I'm auditing the things that people tell me when I meet them in person, right? And more so than not, I'm looking and asking to see how many international players they have in their systems across their senior or youth levels, right? Because that's a really good indicator. Obviously, if players from Australia or somewhere else have a European passport, it makes things super easy. But if they don't, we need to make sure that it's clubs that are willing to sort of handle the visa work or allow room for international players, right, to flourish. The next point, probably the most important point, is the residency and welfare. For example, if a player, while on trial, has to share a room with 4 others, that's not a place I want to take someone. It simply just isn't good enough, While different clubs have different budgets, and usually the bigger clubs allow for, and I say usually because it's not always the case, more budget, it's going to be a better experience, it's going to be better facilities, better organization, right? And usually this sort of stuff doesn't happen. It usually is the smaller clubs that don't sort of have those proper setups. It does still happen with big clubs where what you'll find is they'll stick 5, 6, 7 players in one room, while they're trialing, and just to save costs, just a penny pinch. And it just becomes a very undesirable, toxic environment for players that are already going overseas, they're already missing their family, they're already struggling with so much mental battle. On top of that, to not have, enough personal space is a big no-no for me. And any club that sort of has that set up, we either don't work with, or I get my internal team to provide other residencies outside for our players that aren't tied with the club, right? So my players end up having a better experience. The third point would be contractual clauses. So I actually negotiate player treatment directly into our contracts that we have with clubs, like our agreements. Don't want to say too much, I'm aware that not just players and parents are watching my videos, but let's say simple stuff could be guaranteed evaluations, maybe minimum training sessions. You get the point, I don't want to say too much, but basically my players as a subsequent get treated better because that's what the club signed off of, right? I legally enforce clubs to treat my players better than say another player that's coming from a different agent to the same club at the same time or whatever, right? And I've had players mention this to me that, it seems odd or unfair or whatever. Game's the game. At the end of the day, I only care about our players going through us. So if a club has a problem with certain stuff that we put in, it's usually a red flag for us and we don't want to work with them. The last one would be operational philosophy. So basically, all these big clubs have great on-pitch football philosophy, but no operational systems outside of the football. That means that if we would want to work with that club, we basically need to fill in that gap for them and have my own team in Spain logistically work around them with the other stuff that's outside of the football, right? Because there's a lot of moving parts that goes into players wanting to trial overseas. Basically, those are the sort of 4 main points that we look at with club partnerships before, they've sort of got to be ticked before we want to collaborate with them outside of the business aspect, right? The bottom line is most agents will send you basically wherever they can. We focus on only sending players where we would send our own family. Environment has to be safe, football has to be spot on, and whether you make it or not, there has to be a real pathway up. Simple as that. Now on the flip side, why do these clubs sign exclusive deals with elite football? Why are they willing to treat our players better? Why do we get better deals for them? Why do we actually, how do we actually get players across the line? The million-dollar questions that I get asked a lot by others. So it's no secret that I speak relatively confidently when I'm going through all this sort of club stuff. I'm probably going to bring it down to two main points, right? Obviously I can say, things like clubs don't want to talk to parents or players, which is why they use agents to be that filter for them and this and that. And there's other things that go into our business. But the 2 main points of why we get more than any other is 1, leverage, and 2, brand. Let's start with the first point. What do I mean by leverage? Basically, clubs operate like any other business in the world. There is multi-level facets of a club. There is different departments of each club, all trying to make the club money. Whether it's the professional side of the club, dealing with the professional players, the first team, second team, whether it's the marketing or brand side of the club that's trying to bring in sponsors and brand deals for the players and club, etc. International side, investment side, like the list just keeps on going, right? Like these big clubs are huge, right? They're billion-dollar enterprises, some of them. The amateur side of our agency as a face value is the passion project. While today it is self-sustainable and we have our own teams that are running it and it works well, there was a time where we lost money on trying to help amateur players because obviously it is very risky. It's probably more risky than working with professional players. In turn, we spent years working with these clubs outside of this. And so we've made clubs and we make clubs a lot of money in other aspects. So when I say leverage, when you are making someone X amount of money here, they're going to want to repay you somehow. And their versions of repayments come with what we want ultimately, which is our brand. So instead of taking a huge lump sum up front, we get rewarded in other ways with these clubs. And those ways can be them letting me know when their striker gets injured, or them having access to the database of players that we have and they let me know when they are needing a certain gap, certain position, certain age or whatever to increase my chances of getting a player signed. And it's business. When you do a favor for someone here and you want to push a player up higher somewhere else, they are going to respond to that request accordingly. Now, even with me or the team saying nothing or doing anything, ultimately, because of this leverage, because they know that we do this for them, they are going to basically offer all our players a much better service and be more, let's say, suggestible to having them go up the ranks than any other player coming from any other agent. You can understand, most agents work with 2 players a year or something, 5 players a year, 10, whatever it is. But regardless of that, they don't understand how to actually provide value to clubs. And so they are just another number. And the clubs shaft the agents more so than anyone else. I've learnt from experience. So back to my point, what's the benefit of us working with over 25 professional clubs? Now, at the start, recently this got too much just for me and Dad. Luckily, there's a whole team at EFA now. 3 of our team members, myself and Dad included, all manage different sort of clubs, so we can work that workload a bit easier. But basically, every club has a different style, different culture, different need of a player profile. So basically, when you work with so many clubs, it allows us to match the player profile to the right club, lowering the failure rate dramatically just from that one thing. So it's not really just about getting you a trial anywhere, it's about trying to pick the right one for you. So if you're a serious player looking for the right opportunity, not just any opportunity, we should talk. Link down below, you can book a free evaluation call with my support agents and have all your questions answered.